Welcome to Lesson 5. From this point on in the course, we're now going to turn more to the practical side of applying those principles in many different ways and means. And we're going to start right off on the bat with really kind of the meat and potatoes of UN CIMIC, and that is coordination and information management. Now, the important thing to understand about coordination in the UN sense is that it's different than, let's say, in the US or NATO sense. And in NATO and the US, CIMIC is really a coordination activity that's part of a larger command and control piece, okay? In the United Nations, CIMIC is a mission coordination tool. It's part of an overall toolbox that the mission leadership team, that includes the SRSG and the force commander and all the other major players, to coordinate the efforts of the mission to create greater effect and get the mission done better and faster. So it's in an integrative way that UN CIMIC is done in the United Nations, as opposed to just a sort of command and control aspect. That's the real important difference between coordination in UN CIMIC and coordination in any other types of CIMIC. Now, the other thing that's really important to remember is that civil military coordination is really done for two major reasons, two imperatives, if you will. One is this very complex environment that we're working in. All kinds of different actors working at different speeds for different purposes, and making sure that at least we're not interfering with each other as much as possible, but more working closely together. The other major driver or imperative for better civil military coordination is the fact that the resources are getting more and more dear, more and more scarce. That not just includes people, that includes money and many other aspects and assets that the mission has. So we have to take what we've got and make it work better together. And that's really the essence of CIMIC, and that's why we do it. Now, in all aspects of peace operations, and CIMIC in particular, CIMIC is a knowledge-based business, okay? The currency of that business is information. So in addition to coordination, you have to be very expert at how to handle information. How you get it, why you get it, for what purpose, how you put it together, and how you present it to others, and importantly, how you share it with others to create the effect that you're looking for. So every CIMIC operator needs to be very good in both of those areas, and that's what this lesson will help you do. There's two real important examples of information management, if you will. One is this relationship between information and intelligence. At all times, a UN CIMIC officer is a CIMIC officer. Now, we all understand that intelligence operations derive a lot of their information that they later make into intelligence through activities like CIMIC for very obvious reasons. But that doesn't mean that a CIMIC officer is an intelligence operator. Not in any way, shape, or form ever is a CIMIC officer an intelligence operator. You keep those things separate. They're related, but they're separate. So that's really important. There's a couple of reasons for that, by the way. One is, of course, that you have to make sure that the integrity of your mission as a CIMIC officer working among and between all these different actors, particularly civilians, is never compromised. That's the important thing. But in more serious situations, when the environment is less than permissive, mingling or co-mingling CIMIC operations with intelligence operations could have certain force protection implications. You could get people hurt or even worse, killed, to include soldiers and civilians, if you're carelessly mixing those two things. So remember to keep those things separate, and very, very discreetly so. The other major example of information management that is critical to CIMIC is, of course, your CIMIC reports. CIMIC reports should be supportive of and never duplicative of the larger reporting and information management scheme of the mission. So be very careful about making sure that whatever CIMIC reports you're putting together, that they are enabling a much more clear and accurate picture of what's going on with respect to the civil military situation for the mission, and it supports the overall mission goals. So keep that in mind, and the lesson discusses that and gives you lots of good pointers. Now, with respect to coordination, when you're coordinating with people, you're also collecting information, obviously. You're interacting with people. There's one question that you need to keep in mind whenever you're collecting information or even preparing information as a CIMIC officer. And that is, who is doing what, when, where, how, and why. Who is doing what, when, where, how, and why. Commit that to memory, because every time you're thinking about gathering information or putting that information together, that's how you should frame it in your own mind. That's really what CIMIC is trying to do, because it's trying to get a better picture of that interaction that's going on between all these different players. That interaction, which, by the way, is extremely difficult to manage. It's kind of like what they say in the video that you'll see in the lesson. It's rather an entertaining little video about herding cats. So remember that your contributions to the mission, in terms of assessments, in terms of reports, in terms of information sharing, are helping to shape that overall mission. Keep that in mind, because that's why information sharing and coordination as a UN CIMIC officer is so qualitatively different than for most other folks.